Good morning. Good morning. It is Monday morning motivation once again. How is everybody doing today?
Yes.
If you are brand new to the channel, we've been seeing a lot of new names lately. So if you guys are brand new, my name is Chris, better known on YouTube as Chris Cooking Nashville.
I'm Ash.
Yes, the beautiful Ash Taylor,
So sweet.
country artist extraordinaire over here. Make sure to go to ashtaylor.com if you love country music because she's amazing and you can hear me playing a little lead guitar and doing some harmonies with her as well. And on YouTube, I am a proper human diet chef, and Ash and I have both had some amazing life-changing results by being on a proper human diet, and it's really quite amazing, and we love sharing all of the information we have and trying to help as many people as possible. And if you stumbled into Monday Morning Motivation, we are here to do this sort of interview and podcast style, discussion style on a weekly basis to try to help motivate you guys on your journey, because it's not just about your physical health, but about your emotional health, your spiritual health, your mental health, and all of these things working together. And I have to say, this is going to be a very special Monday morning motivation.
It is.
Would you like to tell everybody why? I know I'm excited about this, but why you are so excited about this?
So today we have a very good friend. We're going to introduce y'all to her in just a second. Coach Alyssa is here. So I actually had the pleasure of meeting Alyssa at KPL, Keto Palooza, this past fall. And it was my first time getting to meet her in person and everything. And we had a conversation. We talked on and off, I guess, throughout. But there was a conversation we had where in 10 minutes, she shared some information with me that literally changed the game for me. I mean, life-changing stuff here, you guys. So, clearly, we're not doctors. We're not here to give medical advice, but I think it's important to share, the things that we go through on our proper human diet journey and bring people like Alyssa in who maybe can teach us a little bit on how our bodies works, why this works, what's going on. And I think it just might be really, really helpful to a lot of the ladies watching, but also the guys to understand, the women in your life, maybe a little bit about your own body. So I am so excited that she's here and that she's been gracious enough to give her time. So comment down below. You guys, please make her feel super, super welcome.
Yep.
You want to bring her on?
Let's bring her on. If you guys have questions, make sure to drop them in the chat. Put a Q in front of it so we can find it easily. And as time permits, we'll see if either us or especially if Coach Alyssa has time, we'll try to answer some of those questions for you guys. But guys, give a big CCN, Chris Cooking Nashville, warm welcome to a good friend, Coach Alyssa.
Yay!
Good morning.
Good morning, my friend. How are you today?
I'm making it. I am raising tiny humans, and so we got coffee, we got tea for later. I'm making it happen.
I love it. Well, I actually wanted to start out a little bit before we get into all the health stuff and all. Tell us a little bit about yourself. So you're raising tiny humans, and just tell us about you.
I'm raising 3 tiny humans. So my oldest is Bradley, and he's 8 going on 80. He's our little old soul. We've got Hannah, who is 5, and she is everything that middle children typically are, and we love her so much. And then I have a 4-month-old. Her name is Lizzie, and she is the reason why I am not sleeping currently, and we are on team no sleep. But it's okay. It's just a season. I have to remind myself of that.
Right.
But I have been a health coach for the last 5 years. I originally started my health journey way back in 2017. I had Bradley in 2016. Okay. And I, got into 2017 and had kind of gained back all of my pregnancy weight, but wasn't pregnant again. And I just got to the point where I was really frustrated and I was really done. I couldn't keep up with my son, who was, starting to walk around, and I was exhausted and tired all the time. And I didn't want to feel that way anymore. Unfortunately, I was raised in the 90s. And so I've done every diet under the sun. I did South Beach. I did Atkins the first time. I did Weight Watchers. I remember getting calorie counting books with my mom. I did slim fast carbs, you name it. I have had experience with it in some form or fashion. So naturally what I decided to do was to do Beachbody. And so I started off doing Beachbody, and I was drinking shakes and killing myself with at-home workouts that I was not prepared to be able to do. And I happened to start listening to a podcast from a Beachbody coach and heard about a ketogenic diet for the first time. And I kind of went, hold on a second. That is the complete opposite of everything I've ever done. And so I started listening. I just started searching. I was like, okay, surely somebody else is talking about this. So I found like the 2 keto dudes, you know, like different podcasts, things like that. And there wasn't a whole lot of stuff back then in 2017, but I researched it and I was like, okay, I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to kill me. But at this point, I was diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease at 27 years old. I was in chronic pain. I was having back and bladder spasms from stress. Like I had a whole lot going on in my body in my 20s. And so I was like, surely whatever I do at this point couldn't be worse than what I'm doing right now. So my husband and I went on a cruise in 2017 and I was like, we're going to do whatever we want on this cruise. And then we come back and we're doing keto. And he was like, okay, sounds great. And he got on board with me. And ever since then, like it completely changed our life. So I lost about 50 pounds. James has lost about 75 and we've kept off since 2017. And I no longer have fatty liver. I no longer have crazy like cholesterol lipids. I don't have chronic pain anymore. I don't even have seasonal allergies, which is something I dealt with. And so I have seen so much success by choosing just a real food diet. And my diet's evolved over time. You know, I started off, you know, keto and did all the keto treats and the things and the stuff. And then kind of ended up going carnivore and then was like, I do what I want. So I called it casual carnivore, which is basically what we call ketovore now. And now I don't really necessarily put myself in any box because I eat differently almost every day, in a way that works well for my body and for my cycle. And right now I'm a nursing mom. So my diet looks very different than what it typically does. And I'm okay with it because as long as my body feels its best, then the way that I'm eating is the best way for me to eat, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. And I love that you have really just had like this journey though over years where you've been able to just essentially, I mean, really just change your life and it sounds like your husband's life, your family's life. By the way, so we do a thing here, Alyssa, where when someone shares like, man, I had fatty liver and now I don't, or like I've lost this much weight or I've done whatever, we say rock on. So please put a rock on in the comments for Alyssa. Because
it's got fancy lights and everything.
Light shows and all.
We like to really, we like to celebrate our friends' wins here. It's like, but I mean, you know, that's so amazing and so encouraging. So, you know, out of the gate, if I could ask you a question. So, I love that, you know, like you said, you know, you're a mom and, you know, it's like you kind of just eat to your body, do your stuff. So my youngest brother and his wife actually just announced that they're pregnant. So Chris and I are going to be aunt and uncle. So we are so excited. So I would love if you don't mind just sharing a bit, though. What does carnivore look like being, you know, a nursing mom? Like how does that change for you? Because that is something I feel like I don't hear talked about a lot, but as someone who has a family member who's pregnant, who I'm trying to encourage to be better, I would love for you to share maybe a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Sure. So when and what I will say is that every pregnancy is different. And so like the way that I ate for Hannah is not the same as the way that I've eaten for Lizzie. And so when I was pregnant with Hannah, I definitely did a lot more meat. Protein forward is kind of the phrase I use. So it was mostly meat. Like I said, I dubbed myself a casual carnivore because like, you're not going to take away my olives and my pickles and my avocados because I love those things and they make my heart happy. And I can enjoy a very, you know, still diverse, wonderful carnivore-ish diet by adding in the little things that I enjoy. And so with Hannah, that is very much what I did. And when I was nursing, one of the things things that I pulsed in electrolytes. I was drinking Relight like a fiend, trying to make sure I was maintaining a good milk supply. But with Lizzie, this pregnancy was a lot harder, and it was more challenging. Also, I was geriatric pregnancy or advanced maternal age. And at first I was like, that's not a real thing. And then I was like, oh no, yeah, being pregnant at 37, that's a real thing. It's kind of hard. And so there was definitely a lot of more give and take. And so I definitely pulsed in some more like real food carbohydrates. For me was having higher amounts of fruit or having some sweet potatoes and things like that. Things that I have learned in my diet journey are things that I can have, but in differing amounts and in different parts, like I said, in different parts of my cycle. Like I don't eat them all the time. But what we have to understand is that when we are pregnant, we are having crazy higher amounts of progesterone because we are growing and we are anabolic. So we're actually even more insulin resistant during pregnancy. But that has a purpose. It's to help grow a fetus and it's to grow a baby. And so I do not feel bad about having more carbohydrates and or more food in general in pregnancy and now even in nursing, because I have to feed another human. And until that human starts eating real people food, then, I have to maintain that supply. And so for me, carbohydrates have been a tool that I utilize and that way I can maintain that milk supply. And then once she is done nursing, I will shift back into my regular carnivore-ish type diet, which changes monthly, because that's the way that I choose to eat that feels the best.
I love that though. I mean, I think this is honestly some really invaluable information. I mean, just the thought of like, well, yeah, you're clearly, feeding another human. It's like that takes extra resources. So that is so cool. I love that. Well, if you don't mind, so like I was sharing, we got to meet you at KPL and that was awesome. And you shared some information with me that was like a total game changer. And I was just like, why is this not common knowledge? Like, I feel like it should be. So I would like, if you don't mind, just to kind of start things off, I would love for you to maybe share with us about men and women's hormones, like what is the difference in our bodies and how they work. And I mean, more about stages and cycles, but please educate us for those of us that don't know about how, our bodies work.
Yeah,
Sure. So one of the things that I see in this space is the idea that, what works for one person should work for everyone. And I just don't agree with that. Because I don't think that that's how our bodies work, right? Men and women are different. We have different hormonal cascades that happen. For men, they have a hormonal turnover that's on like a 24-hour time period. So basically, like dudes are the same basically every day. And that's great for them. And I love that for them. However, as women, we are delicate flowers and we have a 28-day hormonal cycle that happens. And it changes not just during that 28 days, but it changes over time as we move into perimenopause and then menopause and postmenopause. And so for women, we have this 28-day cycle, 28 days-ish. It can be anywhere from 25 to 31 days. And all of that is totally normal. But there's different things that are happening in our cycle in that time frame. And so the first 2 weeks-ish of a woman's cycle is known as the follicular phase. And in the follicular phase, that is when we have highest levels of estrogen in comparison to progesterone and testosterone. Now, when we have higher estrogen levels, we can fast a little bit more aggressively and it feels good to our bodies. We can lift a little heavier at the gym and it feels good to our bodies. We can eat more carnivore for those that enjoy doing that. And if you are already carnivore, you can go like more protein forward, maybe backing off the fat a little bit and play around with your macros because it feels good in that time frame. As a woman shifts into ovulation, what happens is we have a change in hormones. And so at ovulation, we have this shift where now we're shifting from an estrogen forward metabolism to a progesterone forward metabolism. And so ovulation and post-ovulation in what we call the luteal phase, estrogen is declining as progesterone is increasing, because what happens is at ovulation, we produce an egg, and that egg, if it gets fertilized, makes a baby. The body is going to function that way regardless of whether you want babies or you want 0 babies. And so we have to work within the confines of that. And so we have to understand that as progesterone is increasing, progesterone utilizes glucose a little bit more efficiently than estrogen does. And so in your luteal phase, you're going to crave and want more food in general. So it's okay to eat more in your luteal phase. If you're trying to rock OMAD 28 days in every cycle, you're going to get super pissed in like days 20 to 28 of your cycle. It's not going to feel good, and you're going to be mad about it. And so fasting aggressively is really hard in your luteal phase. Eating carnivore without sufficient amounts of fat, or utilize, this is where you can pull in carbohydrates as a tool to help your body retain electrolytes and retain a little bit of fluid. But also, like, you have to play around with those macros, because you can't go as protein forward, less fat in your luteal phase. Our body creates hormones from fat, and carbohydrates, that hydrate, helps us retain fluid and retain things so that we can do that hormonal repair and hormonal generation. And so what I don't think people understand is how that works. I didn't know what a follicular phase or luteal phase was until I was in my 30s. And I've been doing this since I was 13. It would have been really handy to know, like, oh, by the way, like, when you're like craving and you're wanting to like go face first into Ben and Jerry's or whatever it is that you eat in your luteal phase, like week before your period hits, like, that's totally normal. And if you would just eat a little bit more of like real food, that wouldn't suck as much. The other thing that women tend to crave is chocolate. And that's because we actually need more magnesium. We need more electrolytes in our luteal phase. And chocolate is a source of magnesium, albeit it comes with a bunch of other stuff. So it's like, oh, so what I also have to make sure I do is pulse in more electrolytes, or I have a specific magnesium powder that I absolutely love, and I pulse that in those 2 weeks, kind of front loading it so that I don't get to days like 24, 25, 26, and I'm like a Hoover vacuum in my kitchen trying to like get all the food in that I possibly can, right? And so that really was such a game changer for me to understand that I can't live in a box because I'm not a dude. And so like, I can't fast as hard all the time. I can't lift as heavy all the time. I can do those things sometimes, but I can't do them all the time. And I say that you can, but you're going to make it harder on yourself. And if that's the road that you want to do, like, go on with your bad self. But I prefer to work with my body rather than working against it. Now, and I say all of that to say that it's a whole other ball game when you get into perimenopause, and then when you get into menopause and postmenopause. When you're a postmenopausal woman, your body, because of that hormonal decline, will kind of start to function a little bit more like a male's, because you actually end up having a little bit higher testosterone compared to estrogen and progesterone. So you can fast a little more aggressively. You should eat more protein forward. You should still be lifting heavy things for what's heavy for you. And then perimenopause is the time where our body just basically loses its mind as our hormones deep dive off the cliff. And so it becomes this like, well, it's Monday. What's it going to be like today? Because it could be different tomorrow. And you have to just kind of move through that with grace and understanding that it's going to level out, but it's going to take time. And the other thing that I didn't know was that perimenopause is like a 10-year period. Like, I'm technically already tiptoeing into it at 37. And I see those things. I started noticing, oh, my cycle has gotten a little shorter. That's interesting. That's one of the first signs that you're beginning to go towards perimenopause. I was noticing other symptoms, and then it just turned out I was pregnant. So I was like, oh, JK. But going forward, I'm going to plan to go get some baseline hormonal lab markers so that I can see where I'm at so that I can begin to prepare and like be ahead of the game as much as possible when my body starts to shift and change, and be able to make adjustments as I go along, rather than trying to be reactive to all of these new onset of symptoms and feel like, well, I was doing everything right. Like I was doing all the things that I'm quote unquote supposed to do. Why isn't it working? And so that's one of the things that I do with clients. I typically work with clients somewhere in their 30s to 50s and 60s, helping them navigate that journey and understand that all you have to do is make some little tweaks and some shifts and be able to just take it, a season at a time, whether that's the season of your 28-day cycle or the season of the shift from that into peri, or the shift from peri into postmenopausal.
Yeah. Wow. So like, you guys, that was some amazing information. I mean, I there's so many things I could say about this, but Alyssa, thank you for sharing that, because this is what you shared with me. And I think like just some key things though that you said that I think are important to really focus in on. There's that saying, a house divided does not stand. So it's almost like maybe a lot of us not knowing it are really working against our bodies. And so just to love yourself and realize like, where it is, what we need to be doing. And especially as women, us, being able to give life and carry children and give birth, our bodies work so differently from, say, our husbands' bodies. And, I think for me, like I felt, real talk. We get real open and honest. We dive deep. But like I think when it comes to women's cycles and periods and all this stuff, I feel like for me, and I think most women, and Alyssa and I were kind of talking about this backstage. I think it's like when you reach that age and you get your cycle for the first time, it's like, here's a tampon. This is what it is. This will there's really there's no education. There's no, well, let me explain what's happening. Do you know that your body is doing this, 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 and this? Like, do you understand that? So this is something I feel like is just really not talked about very much. But I love that we're talking about it today, because I think it's so important for women to know. And especially if we have daughters. I mean, like, if I'm ever a mother, I would hope if I have a daughter, I could teach her this and hopefully make her life better. And I think a lot of women, including myself, I tried carnivore for 30 days and I felt like there was a lot of pressure on me to be able to do carnivore and it just be like the coolest thing ever. And like, I dedicate my life at this point because of who I married to carnivore. I'm like, yes, but it's like, I am so on board, but it's like, man, I tried it and it just didn't really work the way that it should. And I feel like I got a little bit of backlash for that. And so, and I'm sure people didn't mean it, but I'm like, it's not that I don't want it to, I just don't think that my body is maybe quite there. And also, even if I could do it for a period of time, I don't know if I want to be there. I'm much like you. I'm like, I like a little salad, a little every now and then. So I love that you kind of mentioned all those points, but also I think when you understand your cycle and you understand your body, like, I always felt really guilty when I would hit that certain phase where I'm like, why am I craving carbohydrates so bad? Does that mean I'm a bad person? Am I like, why do I want to go dive into a tub of Ben and Jerry's?
Yeah.
Like, that's a real emotion.
It's a real thing. The thing about it is, it's like, your body is smart. Our bodies are so smart, and your body is like, sometimes the signals get mixed up. Right. And that's a real thing. Right. And so, but I think it's this idea of like there is a difference between a emotional call for something and a physiological call for something. And I think that we have to understand when we hear those signals, is it emotional, right? Like, head first in Ben and Jerry's oftentimes is emotional. Like, I had a bad day, I need to eat my feelings, and so I very often, one of the things I work with clients is like, we don't feed our feelings with food. And if that's a thing that we have to have conversations about to dive deeper into and ask some tough questions, we will absolutely do that. But our body will often call physiologically for things. Now, sometimes if we're craving sugar or carbohydrates, it could be that we need some more salt salt. We need some more electrolytes. So this is not me. I am not an advocate for like intuitive eating. Because if I was intuitively eating, I would be intuitively eating cupcakes. Okay. Like just face first. But what I'm saying is listening and understanding the signals your body gives in the context of a real food diet, right? Not a standard American diet. And so this is why when we were having that conversation, I was like, if you're really wanting some more carbohydrates, try having some more berries, dare I say it, have half of a banana. Like, y'all don't come at me in the comments. Okay. But like, having half of a sweet potato with butter and cinnamon, no sugar, right? Because the sweet potato is already going to have a high carbohydrate count. And when I say having that, I don't mean having that 3 times a day. Like, if I'm having a luteal phase day, my carbohydrates may go up to 100, maybe. Like, it just depends. But my typical like follicular phase, 0 to 50, sometimes closer to 0, depending on how hard I'm fasting or how carnivore I'm choosing to be. And so I think the thing is that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that applies to lots of things in life, but especially when it comes to diet, you can do a lot of things. You can fast and do OMAD over, day after day over time. You can only choose to eat meat. You can only choose to do beef, salt, and water. And I don't think that there aren't people that benefits. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that the proper human diet is a spectrum for a reason. And that if you aren't thriving on lion, don't let someone tell you that like you're just not lioning hard enough. Like, maybe you need to take a step back and go, okay, this is a spectrum, which means I can be anywhere on this spectrum. I wonder if there's a different place for me to be that might work better for my body, my circumstances, my willingness to do or not do something. I think that plays a really big role too. And then, like I said, for me, I move in and out of different spectrums. Sometimes I'm like, we call it in our Compass VIP group, like keto with a paleo edge. So we do like real food carbohydrates, we might, do like a little bit of raw honey or something like that in a recipe. But then I'm also over here going, carnivore plus olives and pickles, because that felt really good to my body that day. Like so far today, I've had bacon and eggs, because that's typically what I have most of the day. And I've had coffee. And I don't, lunch is probably going to be McDonald's burger patties, because I am working today and my nanny is here with my 3 children because they have the day off and life is chaos. And so honestly, we're probably going to punt and we're probably going to do burger patties today, and then dinner will be whatever else meat I can scavenge. So today is going to kind of be a meat heavy day for me. Now, because I'm a nursing mama, that means I'll be pulsing in a lot more electrolytes, because I'm not having those carbohydrates to help retain that, to help with my milk supply. So it's just one of those things, like, you have to understand the give and take, and it doesn't always have to fit in the same box every single day. And if I could tell any woman, I would say that, like, it's okay if you're keto one day and carnivore the next day, or if you're ketovore the following day, or if you go and dare be a paleo person for, 24 or 48 hours. Like, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to experiment and find what works best for your body in the season of life that you are currently in. And if somebody else doesn't like that, they can go butt a stump. Like, I mean, because they're not walking around in your shoes living your life. And so you don't need to worry about what somebody else is doing or not doing, because if it's not working for you, it's not working for you. And you need to go find a way to do something different that works.
Oh, I love this. We should pass the offering plate. She's preaching today.
I'm telling you, we love some preaching.
Woo, yeah.
We love some preaching. And truthfully, this is really great stuff, because one, I mean, anyone in our community knows I'm very well known for standing up against the I'm going to beat you up for not doing it right people. That's just, it's like we should all be here to help each other, not beat each other up. So that's a big thing for us. But also, this information, I'm a dude. I don't know about any of this kind of stuff. I've never dealt with any of these things. I don't I don't walk by the fridge and want to rip it open and find whatever ice cream is in the back of the freezer and eat it so that I don't stab somebody. I don't have that experience that way.
It's a wild feeling.
Yeah.
Wild feeling.
I have, I have my own issues, of course, but that is not something I relate to. And so when you talked with Ash about all of this stuff when we were at KPL, and then she explained it all to me, and I was like, this makes a lot of sense just from a logical science standpoint, even though I can't personally relate to the experience. I get exactly what you're saying. And she said, I really want to do these things that Alyssa told me to do. And I said, okay, cool. Let's do this. And so now, being the recipe creator and the cook in the house and all that kind of stuff, I'm the one that's usually in charge of the grocery shopping and, that thing. So she literally will tell me, okay, this is this week, whatever. So I know what it is we're walking into each week. And I will be at the grocery store and I'm like, hey, do I need to pick up berries for you while I'm here today? Do I need to get, whatever it is? And so I know how to shop based on the things that she needs. And for all the guys out there that are like, oh, this is women's hormones, I don't care. Believe me, you do, because you are surrounded by women in your life.
Yeah.
And if you can support them and help them feel better and you can help them stay happier and healthier, you're going to be a lot happier and healthier too, because guess what? Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So take care of the women in your life.
1,000%. Everybody wins when we all understand how each other's bodies work. I have a son and I have daughters, and all of them are going to understand how a women's cycle works, because two of them are going to experience that, but one of them is possibly going to marry a woman one day, and he's going to need to know how to be kind to her and call her at the store and say, honey, what can I get you? How support you, because we're all, that's the thing. It's like you are affected by this, whether it is physically happening to you or not, because if we all know somebody, we all know an aunt or a grandma. Like I can distinctly remember when my mother went through perimenopause, because it was about the same time that I started my cycle, and it was me and my mom versus my dad. And so my dad just quit talking to us for a while. Because both of us were crazy people, because my mom didn't know what she didn't know. Like she wasn't supported. And so she didn't know that like the food you eat, it plays a role. Like that's another thing we talked about earlier. Is like there are so many things that we do that we think are benign, but every input that we input matters. And this comes from a place of diet. It comes from a place of movement. It comes from a spiritual and mental mindset as well. What you are putting into your body, all of those things is going to have an output. And so if you are looking at these habits or these things that, oh, well, that's not a big deal. Like we were talking about, the homeboy that I was talking to the other day, who was like, I start every day with 4 cups of espresso by itself. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because like, oh, it's like, that's not going to have that's not going to be a problem for your adrenal glands at some point throughout the day. Like, like it's going to be an issue. And so, there's definitely things that I recommend to not just my female clients, but my male clients too. Like we always have the conversation about hormones to some extent, because guys are going to deal with declining testosterone over time. And we want to make sure that guys have healthy amounts of testosterone to be able to lift weights, to be able to have some form of a libido. Testosterone also influences sleep. Like our hormones influence so many other aspects of our lives besides just the reproductive organs themselves. That's why women see more and higher percentages of osteoporosis and osteopenia. Guys do have estrogen, but their estrogen levels basically very, very little change over time in the aging process. Women's estrogen dives off of a cliff. Actually, what it does, it doesn't dive. It goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then it finally just craps out. And so when we don't have enough estrogen, we do not have enough healthy bone and skeletal muscle. And so that's why you see mostly women with osteoporosis versus a bunch of guys walking around with osteoporosis. It's because their levels remain more stable versus ours. This is why when we start to see low progesterone in women, and we see this also even in young girls and young adults as well, but you see anxiety symptoms. That is a sign of low progesterone. And as much progesterone as is necessary. So it can lead to anxiety symptoms, irritability, rage, and so that's why you see all these perimenopausal women who are so pissed and angry. It's because their progesterone is declining and they don't know how to support it. And there's different ways you can do that. You can do that through diet and lifestyle. You can also consider bioidentical HRT. I'm not against either of those options because to me, it's like, I want you to feel well in the body that you're living in, because you get one body to walk around in. And shouldn't you be able to walk around feeling you're as best as you can throughout your entire life? And so that's really where I'm at when it comes to like talking about this and having this conversation, as I want people to feel well. And I want them to understand that the way that you do things now is most likely not how you're going to be able to do things in a decade. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Like, I can't eat the way I did in my 20s, which I ate like a trash panda in my 20s. If I was eating that way now, good God, I don't even want to know what my body would feel like right now at 37. Right. But like, I eat in a certain way in my 30s, but I'm not going to be able to do that in my 40s. Now, do I know exactly what I'm going to be able to do in my 40s? No, not yet. I'm going to work on that. It's going to take time. It's going to take having to pay attention to that. But it's okay that it has to change. And I think that sometimes we get stuck in the box of like, I have to eat this way. I have to do the carnivore thing always and forever. And there are some people who are doing that and who are thriving. And I love that for them. And if that's you, I'm not talking to you. And I wish you the best. Go forth and be amazing. But for those of you who are noticing that things have not gone the way you wanted them to, or you're trying and it's not working, like, you gotta change it up and tweak some things and find what works best for you. And whatever that looks like is fine. Like, and if anybody gives you crap, like I said, someone asked me like, what did she say? I said, go butt a stump. That is a Bradfordism. That is my dad. And that is probably one of my favorite things to say to people when I'm just like, I don't care. You can go butt a stump.
I like that.
I love you, Alyssa, like so much. I just love you. No, but I have to tell you guys, that are watching, it's like when Alyssa shared this with me, like, this is why we were so passionate and we're so grateful that she's here today sharing her knowledge, because I literally, when she told all this and she explained the cycle to me, I'm like, what? I literally went from being super frustrated because, it's like I did carnivore. I felt terrible. Like, I did it for 2 weeks and I was fantastic. I had never felt better in my life. The third week came and I lost it, guys.
Then you ovulated.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I thought I was going to die, but I pushed through, I did it for a month. And so then I went back to doing like really strict, a ketovore. Like, I was still doing mainly a lot of protein, a lot of stuff, but I added some veggies in. And yes, Ash, can you define how the carnivore diet did not work the way it should for you? Yes. So I literally could not get out of the bathroom. I started having to cancel shows. I could not work. I mean, I was bleeding like no one's business. I felt terrible. But just when that third week hit, the first two, I was feeling on top of the world. Yeah. And so
it was really weird that it came out of nowhere so quickly. Yeah. Because you were feeling great. And honestly, as the outside observer, her brain started firing.
I was on it. Yeah.
I was like, man, she is like thinking, she's got ideas. It was crazy. And then the end of week 2 and beginning into week 3, all of a sudden she was constantly struggling, constantly miserable. And we were trying to figure it out from there. And I felt horrible for her because I didn't experience that on carnivore.
Well, no, I think that was the first sign though, because clearly Chris has been carnivore now for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I see how he does on it. So you kind of beat yourself up because I'm like, oh my, like, why can't my body do this? Like, why do I all of a sudden not feel quite right? And so again, putting yourself in a box of, well, I think you should be eating carnivore. So I love that you're sharing this though, because you're right. And also as we get older, things change. But when you shared, and I went and ended up studying my cycle, and then I started tracking my cycle to know where I'm at, what I'm doing. And so then I start to, and I'm very new to this, but when I started doing that advice you gave of basically understanding this is how your body works and this is what it is, at that point, I had actually gained weight. So like when I went carnivore, I lost weight. The moment I went back to meat heavy keto, I gained weight. I gained it all back. And I was like, then I was mad. Let's just be honest. I mean, that's what made me mad. Yeah. So I was really stuck in a rut. But when you shared this info with me and I started to eat based on my cycle and what I felt like my body was needing. So having like doing carnivore for 2 weeks, and it's like, it's really meat and fat heavy, and I'm good, and I fast a bunch. That third week, having some more berries, I eat a lot more food. I also get more sleep. Like I've put it in my calendar to where it's like, okay, so you're in this phase of your cycle, you're going to need to go to bed a little early.
Yes. Oh,
yes.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, because yes, like this applies not just to diet, but to other lifestyle factors. Like in luteal, it's okay to get more sleep. Like your body needs that, because in sleep is where we do hormonal repair and hormonal generation for the next day. And so we have to make sure that we're getting not just quantity, but quality sleep, right?
Yes.
The other thing is movement. So I see a lot of women who are in the tiptoeing into peri, you know, or in the midst of peri, and all of a sudden they're like balls to the wall CrossFit workouts are starting to suck. And they're like, I don't understand. Like I've done it this way forever. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Yeah. Back when you had hormones, that was great. But like, you can't go like to CrossFit at 5 a.m., 5 days a week and think that that's not going to have an effect on your body over time when your hormones are literally not the same those 5 days out of the week, right? Now, this is not me saying that you shouldn't work out. You absolutely should. Moving our body is like a tenet of good health, right? But you can change how you move. And so in that follicular phase, when estrogen's high, we're supporting skeletal muscle. Yeah, go balls to the wall. Go lift the heavy things, do the resistance training, do the HIIT workouts. But when you ovulate and when you shift into luteal, that's where you have to pull in gentler approaches, because your body is literally saying like, girl, we don't got it. Right. So you can still do things, but you could do things like some strength yoga. You can do just more walking in general, walking with like a weighted vest where you're still getting a little bit of that cardiovascular impact. You've got a little bit of like strength, you know, doing things like farmer's carries, stuff that is still going to help build muscle, but not in a way that's going to like completely deplete you because of where your hormonal status is at the time. And I think that that's really important. And I say that as someone like I am just now, I'm 4 months postpartum and am finally feeling like, okay, I think I can go back to the gym and go back to a workout regimen. Like up until this point, it has been like, we go on walks, and I did go to like a yoga class. And even then it kicked my absolute tush. And so I was like, also I went to strength yoga, and it was much more strengthy than it was yoga-y. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is really hard. And so I've had to be okay with that, because I have to keep reminding myself, you literally just had a baby. Like you literally just gave birth 4 months ago. You are feeding a baby, trying to keep it alive. Like you are okay. And so, because what I want to do, and I think this is a bit much, and I, don't come at me in the comments, but our society does not cater to a women's cycle, right? Like it is very patriarchal. I even hate to use that word because people get pissed, but like it's this idea of like, we function on a dude cycle, like do the same thing every single day, forever and always, the end, amen, right? And our bodies don't work that way. And so now, does that mean that we need to just like throw it all in a fire and burn it? And like, now we have to have, a way of working where we honor, that you're going to be out of commission every 28 days. No, but it does mean that like, if you have a job, as we all do, when I get to luteal phase, it's like, okay, like the creativity stuff, I'm not going to be sitting there trying to brainstorm in luteal phase, because my brain does not work that way right now. I'm still going to get stuff done, but I'm going to save the like, let's come up with creative new ideas for like my follicular phase, right? Yes. It's going to be, I'm going to get the things done that I need to do, but I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to kind of just do like the bare minimum of like, for me, it's like, I'm going to answer my emails. I'm going to do the things. I'm going to check my boxes, but I'm not going to go above and beyond, because I need to honor that my brain and my body is just in a state where it can't do that right now. And that's okay. And so I know that may not be what everybody can do, but at least being aware, I think, is the best thing. Is that if you're aware, then it's like you're not broken when you're tired a couple days out of the month, but it's like, oh, but what if I were to pulse in more magnesium? What if I were to pulse in more electrolytes? What if I were to give myself a little bit of carbohydrate? Maybe I could get through that luteal phase feeling pretty rock star and not, oh my gosh, I'm so tired and awful and I hate this. Yeah. And somebody in the comments, yes, I have read Fast Like a Girl. Like we did a book study with my Compass VIP groups because we absolutely like we were hearing about it and I was like, that sounds really good. And so I learned so much from that book. And I used that in with my clients and it's been really beneficial. So, you know, like sometimes I love Dr. Mindy. Sometimes she's a little woo woo and I'm woo woo, but sometimes she's real woo woo. And so, you know, there's places where I'm like, okay, that's for you, Dr. Mindy, you know, but I definitely think that there is a lot of information that she has that can be really beneficial for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought up too, even things like the creative process. So clearly, so like when you told me this, I changed my diet. And at this point I had gained weight, started doing what you were saying, just changing my diet up. So I actually broke an 8-month-long weight stall. So by following my cycle, I'm back to losing weight. I also just feel way more calm. I feel way more in control. But if you realize like your body needs more sleep during that one phase, or, you know, when you know that. So what I've actually started to do, because I feel like basically how I make my living is being creative. So I schedule all of my co-writes or like the time that I'm in the studio during the first 2 weeks of my cycle, because I know that my brain will be firing. I mean, that's when I'm fasting a bunch. Like, but I mean, it's even changed like my workload. I mean, it's changed my ability to be a better creator, to think clearly. I mean, it like, guys, if you take this information that like Alyssa is kind enough to share with us today and implement it, I guarantee that you will see massive change. Like, so love that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and let's look at the comments?
Yeah, let's pop in a few comments here. I think there's some good questions as well that we might be able to just give people some tips here. So Peggy, I know she has some questions that will be popping up here, but she said, good morning from Indiana. You posted a pic a while back making food for your dog. What do you feed her? Do you also feed dog kibble? We have 2 corgis and have wondered. Peggy, great question. We make all of Mel's food from scratch. We have a video on the channel of how we make it. Now, we do include some rice and some veggies because that actually helps her tummy. We would eventually like to get the grains out, but golden retrievers have sensitive stomachs and you got to be careful. So we have a video there, though, where we talk about that. We talk about why we do it, and we don't feed them kibble because kibble is the equivalent of dog fast food and Doritos and all that. And it's just, there's so many things that are not good. So you can go watch that video, though. It's a great question.
That dog food video that he's talking about is also the one and only time you will ever see me in front of the camera cooking. We went to film that because you're like, I do not cook, but I love the dog, so I make the dog's food. So but Chris literally, like, we went to film it, and I thought he was going to make it, and he was like, "Oh no, it's you."
It's all you. No. I threw her to the wolves.
He did. He totally threw me to the wolves.
So Agape Shalom is new to our lives, so we just wanted to say hello. Really glad that you're here. You had a great comment that Alyssa was talking about there with Dr. Pels. So thank you so much for that.
We love new friends.
Yep. Sherry is here. Good morning from Texas. I love it when I'm off work on Monday just for this reason. So cool.
Are you from Texas, Alyssa?
Yes, ma'am. Born and raised.
Yes,
love it.
And my mom is here in the chat watching from ISS today. She says, just FYI, Papa Nashville's birthday is this coming Saturday. Give him a shout out. Maybe tease him for getting older. My dad's probably at least going to be 30 now. So
at least 30.
At least 30. So
looking good.
Yeah. So a big happy birthday to my dad this coming Saturday. Patricia Hoffman, grandma, is here. Looking forward to hearing all your info.
Yeah.
And Peggy thinks this is very interesting, which I would totally agree.
I agree.
So Annette has a good question. She says, so what about a woman that has no ovaries? I had cancer in 2009 and had a radical hysterectomy.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, what happens for women who have to have hysterectomies and you have ovaries removed, basically what they call that medical menopause. So you have essentially been put into menopause. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that your body isn't producing hormones. So what happens as we move from perimenopause into menopause is our ovaries begin to shut down. Like we have given out all the eggs and they are about to say toodaloo, we got to go. It's been fun and we're out. And when that happens, what happens is our adrenal glands become the gland to take over to create sex hormones. So they begin to be the ones to produce estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Now, that being said, our adrenal glands, their primary function is to produce cortisol, our stress hormone. So the reason that we are seeing so many women struggle is because we live in a world full of chronic stress and our bodies are in a constant state of fight or flight most of the time. So our adrenal glands are already pumping out cortisol like a ton. And so then what happens is we get to perimenopause and the ovaries are like, deuces, bye. And they say, it's your turn. And the adrenal glands are like, I'm sorry, I'm a little busy right now. And so they basically give two middle fingers and they're like, no, we're not going to do that because we're too busy over here producing cortisol. And so what happens is we don't get to be able to produce that because cortisol always wins. There is something called the pregnenolone steal, and pregnenolone is a building block of estrogen and progesterone. And if you are in a fight or flight response, if you are in a state where your body has to produce cortisol, it will steal pregnenolone to make cortisol every time because your body is trying to keep you safe. The problem is that our body cannot tell the difference between being chased by a tiger and getting like aggressive emails in 2025. And so we have to figure out how to pull the body into that rest and digest and heal nervous system, stimulating the vagus nerve, all of those things. We've seen like the somatic practices and all the things floating around the interwebs. And so what I would say to someone who has been put into medical menopause, it's going to be really important for you to understand that now you are functioning essentially as a menopausal woman. If you're not on any kind of bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, right? HRT is a different beast because then you are adding in hormone, but you have to figure out, is that hormone enough? Is the transportation correct? And I'm not an expert in any of that. I know that there are people out there in the space who are. And so you would want to work with your provider to make sure that you are getting the right dosings, the right transportation, and monitoring those labs as well as your symptoms to make sure that that's working for you. If you're not on HRT, then you're essentially functioning as, postmenopausal, very, little to no hormones. And so this is where I would say that sleep and stress are super important for you to manage and make as optimal as possible, because you want to make sure that you're getting quantity and quality sleep so that your body can produce what hormones it can via the adrenals. And you want to make sure that you are managing your stress in a positive way with, stress resilience practices so that your body can be in that rest, digest, heal versus being in constant fight or flight. So I think it's possible for someone who's had a radical hysterectomy to be able to still flourish, but it is going to be a challenge. And it's just something that it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to go, okay, this is where I'm at. This is my reality. How do I live into that? And how do I make some changes so that I can live my best life, and be able to move through that in a different way?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Great info. So Reese's Cluttered Kitchen is here, says they taught female health in high school, but at that age, I ignored it. Learned more as I grew and lived through all my female issues. No one told me about menopause at all.
I don't know if y'all remember high school health class, but let me tell you what they taught us in high school health class in Baytown, Texas, because I'm from Harris County, which has the number 7 in the nation amount of STDs. That's all we learned about was STDs and how to not get one, which was basically like, never do it or you'll die. Like that was the extent. We were not taught about our cycle. We were not taught about those things. It was like, that's all. And so like, I don't really truly think that we're being taught anything. It's very much like a Mean Girls, like you will get pregnant and die. Like that's what I think of every time I think of what we're taught in high school. And we aren't. And I wasn't taught anything by my mom, and she didn't know what she didn't know, but like she talked to me about it, and made me not, was like, it's not a scary thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing that happens. But that was it. It was just described as, this is a thing that happens to you. The end.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? And so I feel a little bad because my children will be very educated, and I don't know if that's going to be a blessing or a curse, especially when they go and maybe tell all their other friends all the things that they learned, but it'll be great, like one way or another. But I want them to know, because I don't want them to feel like the way I feel is weird or wrong, or I don't understand it. Like I want to be able to walk through that with them.
Oh, and honestly, like kudos to you, Mama, because I think that's awesome. I mean, I really do though, because how many people though, myself included, have carried guilt for all these years, not understanding how our bodies work or anything. And I don't think we talk about this a lot publicly. And I'm really hoping that will change, because I also feel like, it's like, oh, you have this issue. Well, then someone's going to sell you a pill and they pass it off as, oh, it's normal. Just take this pill from us and, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, thumbs up for that.
Oh, fireworks. Yay.
But no, I love that. And that's why I'm so glad that you're kind enough to, spend this time with us this morning. Because I think if more people knew, it's tools that will help you on your health journey.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Peggy says, do you have any idea why a doc would say they do not check sex hormones if one has reached postmenopause?
Because if you are postmenopausal, the assumption is like, we're done with you. Like, I hate to say that, but like there's different camps, there's different theories. Like there is ancestrally speaking, and I've heard both sides. Dr. Berry does not agree with me on this. And I don't know what camp I'm in, but there's the camp that like the grandmother, like of the tribe, right? Like has, no hormones, none of that, so that like she can be the grandma and she can be the part of the village that helps take care of the other humans and things and stuff. There is another camp that said basically ancestrally, when our hormones like kind of died down, we just died. And I was like, what? But because of like medical technology, we're able to like not die basically. And I was like, that's terrifying. But also I think there's this, once again, rabbit holes upon rabbit holes upon rabbit holes. The onset of menarche, which is like when you start your cycle, has gradually backed up and backed up and backed up and backed up over time to where we have girls starting their periods at 8 or 9 years of age. There are records from like the 1800s in places like Denmark, where I guess they had nothing else better to do than to write down when everybody started their period. And typically they weren't starting their periods until 16 or 17 years old, which is why women got married at 16 or 17, 18 years, because that was like, oh, you are a woman now, you can have children, go get married, right? And so that the thing is that we have a certain amount of eggs. Like you are born with them. They are in you, they're there. And so every time you go through a cycle, you are releasing eggs. And so if way back in the day, we weren't starting menarche until 16, 17, 18, that's a whole decade of like eggs and hormones that we had in that other end of life. You know what I'm saying? So I'm also wondering, did we not start perimenopause or menopause until later, not in our 40s or 50s, but in our 50s and 60s, right? And so now what we have is we have this backtrack. And so now girls are starting their cycles so much earlier, and they're moving through cycles, moving through ovulation, moving through eggs. And then we sit here and go, why do we have an infertility crisis? Could it be because we have a decade where we're like, please don't have babies. That's not a good plan for you. When really and truly we didn't start that until later. Like, it's really fascinating when you like deep dive into it. And that's like a million Andrew Huberman Lab podcasts and all other kinds of things. But I think that that's not even the point of the question. But I think that doctors, basically when you're post-hormonal, they're like, well, you're not supposed to have any hormones anyway, so I don't need to check them because they're going to be zero. And it's like, well, that's not helpful at all, right. Because what if I would like to feel good post-menopausal, And so I think if you may need to search for a doctor who is willing to run those labs to see where your hormones are, to then decide, like, is HRT something you want to consider, as a postmenopausal woman? I know just anecdotally, I have a coach friend whose mother is like 87 or in her 80s and just recently started HRT for the first time. And just a little bump of estrogen has changed her life. It's changed her energy levels. It's changed how she's sleeping. It's changed her body's ability to move. And all it was just a little estrogen, And so, it's fascinating. And so, I think that if you have a doc first of all, if you have a doctor who's not willing to run the labs that you request as a patient, you need to like say something snarky to your doctor, or you need to go find a new one, because you are paying them. Like, you are paying them to work with you and for you. So if you want labs run, you should be able to get those labs run. And if they have to play magic mind games with the insurance codes, that's their job. They signed up for that. So they need to do their job, and you need to get the information that you want if you want your sex hormones taken. And if you don't, then you go find another doctor who's willing to do that for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. I love it. Just wanted to show real quick. Yogi is here, says,
Hi,
I love you,
Yogi.
Chris and Ash, and enjoy listening to Alyssa. Thank you, Yogi, for the super chat. We appreciate that so much.
So
It's always
sweet.
always great to have the support for the channel from all the lovely folks here. Stacy from Easy Peasy Keto is here, says Ken is doing better, hoping by the end of the week to be transferred to rehab for a couple of weeks. We were hoping for home. Please keep the prayers going up.
Absolutely praying for you.
So hoping Ken is going to be getting up and at him and being hopefully his sassy self very soon.
That's right.
But we're glad that he's doing. We're glad he's doing better, Stacy.
Yes, thank you for the update.
Yep. Amy is here with a good question. Says, do you have any advice for women who have a partial hysterectomy and still have ovaries on how to track the cycle?
Okay. So yeah, if you've just had, uterus removed and you still have ovaries, then there is still like the opportunity for you to ovulate. It would depend on your egg status and things like that. If you're having, and so you're not having a cycle, there's not bleeding, but that still doesn't mean that you're not having symptoms as if you were moving through a cycle. So something that I have seen, and this happens even in my clients that are like postmenopausal, like even though they're no longer having a cycle, it doesn't mean that they still don't experience some kind of like follicular versus luteal. Once again, crunchy woo woo, but go with me. Sometimes what I have noticed is we've even had clients who will look at the moon cycle, because the moon is also a 28-day cycle, and notice that sometimes it can kind of sync up with what's happening in the moon, which is so weird. And I don't even understand it, but I'm like, it's kind of real. And so I would say that the advice is to track your symptoms, not necessarily what is happening as far as bleeding versus not. But do you have a period of time where like Ash, you feel really creative, you feel like you could take over the world, like everything's firing, everything feels great, and then do you notice a switch into when you feel like you got to kind of turn inward a little bit, like you just got to, go hide away, get some more sleep, be gentle to yourself. That would be more of like a luteal type phase. I think the thing that fascinates me the most is that I can feel the shift from luteal phase to my first day of bleed. Like I will eat everything in sight. I cannot fast. It doesn't feel good. I'm eating 3 meals a day. I'm eating a ton of calories. And then the first day of bleed, I could fast all day and feel totally fine. And I think that is absolutely wild, that I go in 24 hours, I'm like a whole different human. And so those things are there. You just have to pay attention. So typically what I recommend for my clients is like a food mood journal. If people don't want to track macros, like I totally get that. It's not my favorite thing to do either, but just track like, here's what I ate today. Here's how my body felt today. A number system, or you can just say like, felt good, felt okay, stressed or anxious, like whatever you want to do. And then just begin to kind of put it together. So then you can go back and look at it overall and go, you know what, I'm now starting to see a trend for this week or so. I feel really, really good. But then I have this little like lull here, and then you can start to kind of piece together what your body might be doing at this point in the game, having ovaries, but not having a cycle anymore.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Very cool. So I think we kind of touched on a lot of this already, but if there are any additional tips you wanted to add into the menopause hormone changes and problems, anything additional that we haven't discussed about that?
I will say, like, I love the ladies of a certain age. So like I said, one of the first signs that you'll notice is a shortening of your menstrual cycle. So if you've been a 28-dayer for the last 25 years and all of a sudden it goes to 25 days and you're like, that's weird, and then maybe it's 26, then maybe it's 28, and maybe it's 31. Like that's what happened to me, is all of a sudden my cycles began to get a little irregular. And I was like, that's interesting. That's never happened before, because I have been 28 days on the dot my entire life. So cycle changes is kind of the first thing that you're going to notice. You'll also start to notice things like hot flashes, temperature dysregulation. That's often a progesterone issue. And so that's something that I've noticed, is that I have to change my relationship with coffee in my cycle. Follicular phase, man, I can have coffee. I can have a venti iced Americano at Starbucks. I can feel really great. I can coffee. put me in luteal phase, and if I have more than 1 cup of coffee a day, I turn into a sweaty mess like I have run a marathon. And I'm like, what is happening? That never used to happen. Didn't happen in my 20s. Granted, like I said, trash panda 20s, so like we don't really talk about that. But like I didn't have struggles. And so now it's like, okay, I have to, it's one of those things like I can either suck it up and deal with it and just be like, if I'm going to have a lot of coffee, I'm going to be sweaty and that's my life. Or I can go, you know what, Alyssa, maybe you shouldn't go ham on the coffee, during your luteal phase and back off a little bit. And so those are switches that you can do, that you can make. Sometimes adding in things like evening primrose oil, or like we talked about, like, Dr. Elizabeth Bright is one of the carnivores in the space who advocates for pure carnivore. And anytime she's talking about it, she's really talking about a high fat carnivore diet, and a higher fat carnivore diet works really well in luteal because it gives more of those building blocks to make your hormones. And so that's something that I would even consider. It's like, okay, we're going to up the fat in luteal versus follicular, right? And so that means that sometimes I just change how I coffee, whether it's like a fatty protein coffee versus just like coffee with cream, right? Or what I actually will tend to do is I just switch it and I just move to bone broth, or I move to like non-caffeinated herbal teas with some magnesium, and I'll do those in my luteal phase because I enjoy those just as much as I enjoy coffee. And then I pulse coffee back into whenever I bleed and start my follicular phase again. So you're going to notice temperature dysregulation, you're going to notice mood changes. All of those things for most of us females are related to our hormone regulation or dysregulation at this point. And so addressing food, addressing movement, addressing sleep and stress resilience can help navigate those ebbs and flows a little easier. Is it going to cure all? Probably not. Because like it's still hard and it's still a journey as those hormones begin to decline, but it's going to help it suck a little bit less. And that's kind of what I think we all want, not just for us women, but for all of the dudes who have to put up with us during this time, the journey, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love it. Is it okay if we maybe ask just a few more questions with you, Alyssa, and then we'll let you go? Okay, cool. We just want to be respectful of your time, but
awesome.
Some of the great info here.
Yeah. So. Always be kind. I love that YouTube username. That's fantastic. Says, hello, new sub here. We're glad to have you.
Welcome, friend. Glad you're here.
And Dustin, the beard from Keto Simple, is here. Says sustainability and consistency is the goal, which I absolutely love. Absolutely love. The one and only Bill Knott is in the house. Good to see you, Bill. If you guys want to see a cool, amazing transformation of a human being with Carnivore, he is a fantastic example of that. So cool.
Yes.
And Sherry loves the visual of the butt a stump.
It is pretty great. I mean,
that's a fantastic one. That's probably going to have to come up in our conversation at some point. So Rockin' Keto Amy says, what do you know about HRT replacement, the increase of breast cancer risk? High risk. I'm afraid to try bioidentical HRT because doctors can't deny that it increases the risk of breast cancer.
Right. Okay. So I want to say somebody, Amy, that I would suggest that you go listen to. She has a podcast. Her name is Dr. Karen Martell. And I went to I think it was at KetoCon. I went to a talk that she did. It was all about hormones and menopause and HRT. And from what she explained, there was a study that was done on Premarin, which is a progestin that comes from horse urine. It's lovely. And this was a study that was done in the 90s or early 2000s that everybody freaked out because there was a group in this study that saw an increase in breast cancer risk from the addition of these hormones. What they did not tell you about that study is that there were two arms of the study. One arm was given estrogen only. The other arm was given estrogen and progestin, synthetic progesterone. That arm of the study is the one that saw the increase in breast cancer. So it was not the estrogen that was being given, the Premarin, the estrogen that was being given the horse, the bioidentical basically is what they called that. I'm like, I don't know how that's bioidentical, but okay, great. And so that arm did not see an increase in breast cancer. And so, but because one arm saw it, everybody freaked out, the media freaked out, and it became this like, nobody should have hormones because they're going to kill you. Right. So now that being said, you are a cancer survivor, and I totally understand your hesitancy and your wanting to make sure that what you do is going to be safe for your body. And so you might want to consider more of the diet and lifestyle factors and really honing in on those before you go down the road of HRT. There may be some things that you can change in what you eat or how you're moving your body, how you're sleeping. There could be a lot of things that you could make adjustments before we have to consider HRT. And so I think that you also would, like I said, Dr. Karen Martell is somebody that I've heard speak on this. There's other doctors out there. Carrie Morris, I think, is one that I hear in the health and wellness space. Tina Moore. There's a lot of them out there, like on the Instagrams, that talk a lot about hormones. And so that might be a rabbit hole for you to go down and just listen to what they have to say before you make any decisions about, is HRT something that I want to pursue?
Cool.
Very cool.
Great info. This is really cool. I love Debbie, the way she asks questions.
Debbie's awesome.
Debbie's awesome.
Yeah.
But this is good.
I love that.
What do I need to bother with, Alyssa? In my 70s, my cycle stopped 25 years ago. What's the simple we need to bother with it stuff?
Well, I mean, girl, I guess it's whatever you want to be bothered with, you know? I think it depends on what your goals are in your 70s. You know, like if you're living your best life and you're feeling good, then you probably don't need to make a whole bunch of adjustments. You know, I think that as a lady in her 70s who hasn't had a cycle in a while, you know, if you have lost weight, if your body feels well, then like keep doing what you're doing. You know, I definitely think that if you're not picking up heavy things, you need to pick up heavy things for you, whatever that looks like right now, because you need to maintain your muscle mass, because that is going to help you be an amazing nana to whomever you are nanaing to. And, you know, like I said, my goal at this point, when I first started this journey, I wanted to lose weight. Like that was what I wanted. I really thought that was going to fix my problems. I did not realize that that was just a icing on the cake of what a healthy body feels like. But now at this point in the game, I'm in this for the geriatric Olympics. Like I want to be able to get up and down out of a chair without assistance. I want to get on the floor with my grandchildren and get up on my own. You know, I don't want to just feel old. You know, I felt old in my 20s. Like I remember going, this is what people are talking about when they say this is what getting old feels like. I didn't realize it was going to happen so soon. Like I literally had those conversations with my friends, you know, and now I feel way better in my almost 40s than I ever did in my 20s. And I don't ever want to go back. You know, and so I want to be able to be an amazing nana, you know, or whatever grandma name I end up with. You know, I like Glamma personally. I think that's probably what I'm going to go with. You know, but I want to be able to do that. I think that it is, I think it's really important that as someone in the 70s, my biggest things are protein forward, protein at every meal, 30 to 50 grams of protein if you can at every meal, and lifting weights and maintaining your lean muscle mass for as long as you possibly can.
Cool.
Awesome. I love it.
Straightforward. I love it.
Yes.
So Peggy wants to know, are there any good resources that you know of for fitness for the postmenopausal lady?
Let me see. I'm trying to think. As far as like resources, people that I like to listen to on this would be Dr. Stephanie Estima. She does some really good conversations about fitness for your cycle or even peri and postmenopause. And when we're talking postmenopause, like I said, this is about muscle maintenance, right? And this is, you know, you would still get newbie gains even if you've never lifted heavy in your life. You know, they would not be nearly as gainy as like if you were in your 20s, right? And you had all your hormones. But you need to be lifting. Now, lifting does not mean you need to go and stand next to the gym bro who's deadlifting 300 pounds and be like, can I try that? Please don't. You need to lift what's heavy for you. That could be you. You could be the heavy thing that you are lifting. And that could be things like push-ups, which I know there was like, I'm sorry, you lost me at push-ups. I don't mean like a for real ski push-up. You can start with wall push-ups. You can do incline push-ups, working your way up to a for real push-up. This is squats. And sometimes that squat is a stand-up sit down from a chair. This is doing planks, and you can even do like a box plank if you have low back issues. All of those things are functional movements that work multiple muscle groups and that you can do with your own body weight. You don't have to add weights. If you want to get weights, go get weights. This is where like walking with a weighted vest can be really helpful because you're giving yourself a little bit of extra weight that you have to carry on your body. And that's going to have a strength impact as well as a cardiovascular and from a flexibility and mobility standpoint as well. So I would say that, also like this is for everybody, do the fitness that you will do. Like go do the fitness things that you will do, because I could tell you all day what I think you should do. And if it's not interesting, you won't go do it. I love dance classes. That's one of my favorite things to do. I'm a musical theater kid at heart. And so I love to go to like Zumba. That's not everybody's alley. Totally fine. You don't have to go do Zumba just because I like to do Zumba. I also love to go to body pump because it's basically choreographed weightlifting. And so those are the things that I do because I like to do them. And because I like to do them, I will go do them. And so, same thing for you guys, like whatever it is that you like to do. If you just like to walk, go walk around, put a vest on, go walk around. If you are interested in learning how to lift heavy things, then just start by looking up beginner workouts on YouTube. Y'all are already here. You know how to work it. Go just look up beginner lifting with weights at home or beginner body weight. There's so much out there, and just go try stuff and find what you enjoy doing. And then just make sure that you do it as much as you can.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. As someone who also took weightlifting classes when I was in college, actually, it's one of the things I need to get back to doing because I've got good form. Like I know how to do all that stuff. Yeah. Things that might be really good too, especially for older folks who are out there, maybe consider the resistance band version of it, because then you don't have to worry about the joint pressure and stuff. Because that was one. When I first started, I had like joint issues, and I know being older, sometimes that can be a sensitive area for you in your body. Wow. So maybe those are also real easy to do at home, and they're cheap online to get a set of resistance bands.
Yeah. So variable resistance training is really beneficial. My husband used to have like bad runner's knee and stuff when he was in college. And so he actually has Dr. John Jaquish's X3 bar system and swears by it. He preaches X3 to all the people who didn't ask for it. But it is a good system for people who want to preserve their joints, and so variable resistance, whether it's X3 or whether it's, just getting some resistance bands that you can have at home, that change of the weight throughout the rep can be really beneficial for people who are trying to deal with joint issues or joint pain and inflammation. So yeah, that's a really great one.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Cool. I just thought this was a cool comment. It just kind of shows the journey that this whole thing is, and how it's not just a light switch that you just flip on and suddenly everything is one way and then it's different the next day. So Martha says, I'll soon be 73, started keto about 7 years ago, lost about 50 pounds, rock on for that. And then went keto, gained about 15. Then about a year later, lost 10 of those. So it's all part of the journey.
Yeah, all part of the journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Cool.
And I think the last one I'm going to pop up here for us, and we'll let you go, Alyssa, because I know you have a busy day and kiddos and all of that. So we've talked a bunch about kind of the menopause and the hysterectomy stuff, but I'm going to add a layer to this because this is my mom, so I know the behind the scenes here. So my mom is also type 2 diabetic, and she's bringing her A1C down, and she's doing really good with all of that stuff, but she's still kind of working on that stuff. So are there any extra layers of someone with a hysterectomy induced menopause and all that kind of stuff that also relates to the type 2 diabetes, or any way that would affect any of that? Because I know we also have a lot of type 2 diabetics in the community. So any tips for those folks as well?
Okay, so if you're dealing with type 2 diabetes and you're dealing with a lack of hormones, then what you have to remember is that this is where cortisol really is playing a role, right? Because cortisol is tied to our blood sugar regulation as well. Like it is one of the drivers of blood sugar regulation. So if we have dysregulated blood sugar, then oftentimes what we also have is dysregulated cortisol. And that could mean that you have crazy high amounts of cortisol, which would mean that you then don't have a ton of estrogen and progesterone being produced, or you have what we call adrenal insufficiency and your adrenals have just crapped out and you have very low cortisol. And the problem is that high cortisol and low cortisol symptoms can all kind of like they have similar symptoms. So you have to get like a Dutch test or some kind of like saliva cortisol test to kind of see what your patterns look like. But what I would say is like, if we're working on the blood sugar because of the type 2 diabetes, this is where you need to start looking at things like getting a CGM, understanding what does your blood sugar look like in real time. And so now if you don't want to, now we have over-the-counter CGMs, which I think is fantastic. And it's a great tool. But this would also be utilizing like just a simple glucometer, getting your glucose before a meal, testing it 1 hour after the meal and 2 hours after the meal, because then what you're going to see is where was my baseline and what happened to that little curve in the 2 hours post meal. From there, you can evaluate based on what you ate, was that a good meal for my blood sugar? Did it provide, I typically don't love to see, things go, 30 points max. If we're going into the 40s and 50s, especially if you have type 2 diabetes, like you really want to try and control that as much as you can. And so this would be also considering some supplementation, maybe like berberine to help with the blood sugar, the blood sugar regulation there. And this is where sleep has to really play a role, getting good sleep, because sleep will impact our cortisol, which will impact our blood sugar. It's all connected. That's the hard part. Lifting heavy things, building more muscle mass so that you have what we call a bigger glucose sink. The more muscle mass you have, the better your body will get at handling the glucose that you give it. If you have no muscle mass because you've never worked out a day in your life, then you're going to have to eat a really tight, very low glucose, because any glucose you get, your body kind of freaks out. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. But when you start working out and building muscle and maintaining muscle mass, your body goes, hey, we've got some storage capacity for that. We're going to turn it into glycogen and we're going to go put it in these muscle fibers and we'll save it for a rainy day for when this person goes and works out again and utilizes that glucose. So, there are tons of people who have in the space who've like, well, I lost all this weight without, exercise. And I love that for you. And that's fantastic. But also that's only going to work to a certain point. And at a certain point, you've got to start building a body that can tolerate the foods that you are going to put in it. And that means that we have to maintain that muscle mass and like all of the carnivore dudes that you see out there that are like eating all the meat and stuff, most of them are buff. Most of them have a lot of capacity for any glucose, even if they're carnivore, getting that little amount of carbs. And we also know that excess protein can be turned into glucose if necessary. And so you want to build a body that can take what you're putting in. So I would say if you have a hysterectomy and you're dealing with type 2 diabetes, the first thing is to understand how food is working in your body in this present moment, utilizing a glucometer or a CGM, making adjustments as needed. And if you don't have a movement practice, you need to move your body in meaningful ways. And whatever that looks like, whether that starts off as just walking and stretching, whether that's actually going and doing some workouts, like you're never too old to start. And you need to do that today for sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it.
Amazing.
I love it.
Alyssa, you are awesome, my friend. This has been a wealth of information, I feel like. And I'm excited to see as people, watch the replay or maybe go back and rewatch it. I know I probably will, just to really soak in all the great tidbits that we got. I think this will help a lot of people have some tools on their health journey and just understand things. So before we let you go, though, if people would like to work with you, where can they go to connect with you and find you?
Okay, so I serve as the lead coach in Dr. Barry's Proper Human Diet community. So you'll find me doing most of my work there. But I do also have my own coaching company outside of the PhD community. It's called Compass Wellness. I have two other coaches that I work with, Lindy Bolsterbaum and Terry Barrios. They are two of my best friends. And we all met because we started keto, and we found each other in a Keto San Antonio face group many years ago, and then decided to keep working together and supporting each other and supporting other people. So you can find me over on Facebook at Compass Wellness. And then over on Instagram, I am at Compass Coach Alyssa. And from there, there's links to work with me if you want to have a conversation about a coaching relationship. And you can find all of my links and stuff over on my Instagram or on my Facebook.
Oh, I love it.
Excellent.
I love it.
Excellent.
One quick bit of housekeeping, by the way, guys, if you're watching. So, usually we do our Backstage with Chris every Tuesday night at 6.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow night, we actually will not be doing a live stream, just FYI, because we are going to the Dr. Barry and Amanda Decker Q&A event in Dixon, Tennessee. We're going to bring a group of people out there.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to round up some folks here in Nashville and all carpool down there to, just support and hopefully have some of our new low carb friends get some questions answered for them as they're starting out on their journey. So, so no live tomorrow night.
Yeah, no cooking live,
no
but
cooking live.
if I have some time, maybe I'll put together a special video for you guys tomorrow. If I can, we'll see how the schedule goes, and
who knows?
we'll go from there.
Yes.
So.
Awesome. Well, Alyssa, we love you, my friend. You are such a beautiful human. Thank you for sharing. No, seriously, like this has been so awesome, and I feel like this is just going to help so many people. And I know we've said it a bunch, but thank you for taking time to come talk with us and share. You are just an absolute joy, and we're so glad we were able to do this.
Absolutely. This has been fantastic. You were such a great choice for our first guest on a Monday morning motivation. So just fantastic. We love everything about you. You're amazing, and you help so many people, and we appreciate that. Guys, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and all that stuff. Share this video with the women in your life or the men in your life who have women in their life that they need to learn this kind of stuff. Please help people find this info, because we can sit here and preach it and yell it all day long, but if you guys don't go out and organically help us spread that by sharing it to the people around you, it only goes so far. And we don't want this to stop where it is. We want to try to change the world one plate at a time, and now one hormone at a time for everybody. So please share the video and comment if you're on the replay. Let us know how you're going to use this information in your life. We would love to know what else we can do for you guys. We just appreciate all of you. So everyone have a wonderful rest of your week. We appreciate you tuning in. I know Alyssa, appreciate you guys being here with your great questions as well. And just let us know what we can do to support you guys further and how we can motivate you. We'll be back, if not beforehand for anything, we'll be back next Monday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for another Monday morning motivation. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Chris Cook in Nashville, my beautiful wife, Ash Taylor, the amazing Coach Alyssa. You guys remember to eat your meat, love your life, and be gracious with yourself with those hormones, and do the things that it takes to live your best and fullest life. We love every single one of you. We'll see you here in studio for a bunch more stuff and motivation. And you guys have a great rest of your week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.